Our wedding videographer sent us the footage with a note that said, "I'm sorry, but you need to see what I captured during the ceremony." We'd been married 2 weeks when the wedding video finally arrived. Bryn and I ordered pizza, opened wine, and settled in to relive our perfect day. I plugged in the USB drive. One file appeared. Wedding day, complete package. "Here we go," Bryn said, squeezing my hand. The video started with the ceremony, my entrance, our vows. Soren, my best friend and best man, standing beside me with tears in his eyes. The kiss, the applause, everything perfect. Then the screen went black. Text appeared. "I need to show you something that was captured this morning. I'm so sorry. The camera was running during setup and recorded this automatically. I debated whether to include it, but you deserve to know. What follows was filmed at 7:30 a.m. on your wedding day." I looked at Bryn. "What is this?" "I don't know. Maybe some funny behind-the-scenes stuff?" A new clip started. Hotel hallway. Timestamp 7:30 a.m. My heart started racing before I even knew why. The corridor was empty at first. Long, beige carpet, ugly wallpaper. The camera was stationary, set up on a tripod pointing down the hall. Then a door opened at the far end. Room 115. 2 figures stepped out. A man and a woman. The man was laughing, touching the woman's arm. They walked closer to the camera. Something about the way he moved was familiar. The woman pulled him toward her and kissed him. Not a friendly kiss, a real one. I paused, stared at the frozen image. This doesn't make sense. My voice sounded distant, not mine. "Maybe it's guests from the hotel," Bryn said. Too quickly, the kind of quick where the answer was waiting before the question was asked. I could feel her watching me, not the screen. I pressed play. My hands were shaking and I tried to hide it from her, which was stupid because she was sitting right next to me on the couch. The pizza on the coffee table looked obscene now. Cold cheese, red sauce, the wine glasses still half full. They broke apart and walked closer. Red hair. The black suit I'd told him looked amazing at the rehearsal dinner. My hands went cold. "That's Soren." Bryn didn't say anything. The woman's face turned toward the camera. Dark hair, the dress I'd helped her pick out, the watch I'd given her the night before. My wife, on our wedding day, 4 hours before our ceremony, kissing my best friend in a hotel hallway. The man who stood next to me at the altar with tears in his eyes. The man who toasted us at the reception and said he'd never seen 2 people more in love. I closed the laptop. The room was too quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the refrigerator in the next room. I stood up. My legs felt wrong underneath me. "Where are you going?" "Away from you. Please let me explain." I spun around. "Explain what? That you kissed my best friend hours before our wedding? That you made vows to me while thinking about him? It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" She couldn't answer. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "There's more footage. Check file 3. 3 files." I'd only seen 2. The third was labeled Ceremony Raw, Footage Unedited. I clicked it. The ceremony again, but from a camera at the back of the venue. During the vows, the camera caught Soren behind me. He wasn't crying happy tears. He was mouthing something. I rewound. Read his lips. "I'm sorry." He was apologizing to Bryn during my vows. The footage continued. The recessional. As we walked back down the aisle, the camera caught Soren and the maid of honor behind us. She leaned over and whispered to him. On the audio, faint but clear, she said, "She told me last night. I'm sorry you're going through this." Soren whispered back, "At least after today, it's really over." My entire wedding party knew I was marrying someone in love with someone else. They smiled in the photos. They lined up for the toast. They danced at the reception. They knew. I filed for annulment the next morning, and when Bryn asked if we could talk first, I sent her the clip of Soren mouthing, "I'm sorry," during our vows. The next day, I went to the apartment while Bryn was at work. I didn't want a scene. I just wanted my stuff. Diego, my college roommate and the closest friend I had after Soren, met me there with his truck. We loaded boxes in silence. Clothes, books, my gaming setup, the few things that were mine before the marriage. Diego carried a box down and came back wiping sweat off his forehead. "How long do you think it was going on?" I didn't look up. "I don't want to know." "You need to know, because Soren called me last night asking if I'd talk to you on his behalf. He said it was just a kiss and you're blowing it out of proportion." My hands went still. Soren was already making calls, already building his version, already trying to get people on his side before I could even process it. He wasn't sitting somewhere feeling guilty. He was running damage control. I picked up the box and carried it to the truck. We cleared the apartment in 2 hours. I left my key on the counter and closed the door. That evening, I was on Diego's couch when my phone rang. Maya, the maid of honor, the woman who whispered during the recessional. I picked up. She was crying before she got a word out. "I should have told you. I knew the morning of the wedding and I didn't say anything because Bryn swore it was over. She told me she kissed him goodbye, that it was done." I let the silence stretch. "How long did you know about Soren and Bryn before the wedding?" She went quiet. Not the kind where someone is thinking, the kind where someone is deciding whether to lie. "About 2 months. 2 months. She came to the rehearsal dinner. She threw Bryn a bridal shower. She helped Bryn pick out earrings the morning of the ceremony. She stood across from me at the altar and fixed Bryn's veil and said nothing. "Don't contact me again," I said. "I was trying to protect you. I didn't want you to be hurt on your wedding day. I thought if it was really over, telling you would just cause pain for no reason." "You didn't protect me," I said. "You helped her lie to me in front of everyone I love." She broke down. I hung up. Everyone knew. Everyone except me. I was the only person at my own wedding who didn't know what was happening. I sat in the dark of Diego's living room for a long time after that, replaying the day in my head. The way Maya had smiled at me when I walked down the aisle. The way she'd hugged me at the reception and said I looked happy. The way the bridesmaids had whispered to each other during the toasts. I thought they were sharing inside jokes. They were probably sharing relief that I hadn't figured it out yet. The next morning, Soren texted, "Can we meet? You deserve to hear my side. I owe you that. 15 years has to mean something. 15 years. He was using our friendship like a card he could play. I showed Diego. He's not going to tell you the truth. He's going to tell you whatever keeps him from being the villain. I knew he was probably right, but I needed to look Soren in the face one time. Not because I thought he'd be honest, because I needed to see him say the words so I'd know for sure there was nothing left to save. The diner was one of those old places with cracked vinyl booths. Soren was already there, hunched over a coffee he wasn't drinking. His eyes were red. He looked wrecked. Before I even sat down, he said, "It was a mistake. One stupid moment. I swear, it was the only time." I slid into the booth and pulled out my phone. I opened the audio file I'd saved from the ceremony footage. I pressed play and set the phone on the table between us. Maya Maya's whisper came through, thin but clear. She told me last night, I'm sorry you're going through this. Then Soren's whisper, his own voice playing back to him in a diner booth. At least after today, it's really over. His jaw was tight. His hands were wrapped around his mug so hard his knuckles were white. That doesn't sound like one moment, Soren. That sounds like something that had a beginning and a middle. Tell me the truth, or I'm walking out and you'll never see me again. He looked down at the table. I watched him fight with himself. The lie cracked apart. He let out a long, slow breath. It started about 3 months before the wedding. 3 months. The words just sat there between us in the booth. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just let the math play out in my head. 3 months ago was the weekend Soren came with me to the jewelry store to pick out Bryn's wedding band. He stood next to me at the glass case and pointed at the one with the thin gold band. Told me Bryn would love it. 3 months ago, we went on a double date. He brought some girl he was seeing. Bryn and Soren barely looked at each other that night. Or maybe they looked at each other all the time, and I just never noticed. 3 months ago, we were leaving the gym together and he clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You found the one, man," with a smile. While he was sleeping with her, he rubbed his face. It just happened. There was a night out. You went home early because you had work. Bryn stayed to keep drinking with the group. Everyone else left and it was just us. We were both drunk. It was stupid. And then it kept happening and neither of us knew how to stop it. Every word felt like swallowing broken glass. The picture he was painting was so ordinary, so small. I went home early one night and my best friend and my future wife decided to blow up my entire life over bar drinks. And then they just kept doing it for 3 months while I planned a wedding, while I wrote my vows, while I told my parents the date, while I shook hands with the caterer and stood for tux fittings and signed the lease on the apartment Bryn and I were going to live in together as a married couple. While Soren stood at my rehearsal dinner and gave a speech about how I was the most loyal person he'd ever met. He used the word brother. I remember it because my throat got tight when he said it. I didn't interrupt. I wanted him to hear himself say it. He took a sip of his cold coffee. His hand was shaking. The morning of the wedding, she came to my room and told me it was done, that she loved you and she was choosing you. The kiss was goodbye. I expected rage. It didn't come. What I felt was something quieter, like a door closing inside me, soft and final. Some version of myself that trusted people the way I used to. That version was gone. I asked one more question. Did you ever think about telling me? I almost did, twice. Once about a month in, and once the week before the wedding. But I convinced myself that if she was choosing you, then telling you would just ruin your life for no reason. I stood up. You ruined my life anyway. You just made sure I'd find out in the worst possible way. I walked out. I drove to Diego's apartment. Didn't call ahead, didn't text, just showed up. He opened the door, looked at my face, and stepped aside without saying anything. I sat on his couch and didn't speak for a long time. He didn't ask. He let me sit. The TV was off. The apartment was quiet. He sat in the chair across from me and scrolled his phone and didn't try to fill the silence with words I didn't need. 20 minutes went by, maybe more. I could hear the clock on the wall. I could hear the neighbor's dog barking through the thin walls. I could hear my own breathing, slow and heavy like I'd been running. Finally, I said it out loud. 3 months. It wasn't a kiss. It was an affair. Diego got up without a word, walked to the counter, and came back with a glass of water. Now you know, and now you can stop wondering. He was right. The grief was still huge, still heavy, but the confusion was gone. That fog of maybe and what if and how long was gone. Bryn wasn't someone who made one mistake on one morning. She was someone who lied to me every day for 3 months and married me anyway. Soren wasn't a friend who slipped up. He was a guy who looked me in the eye over and over while he was with my wife. Maya wasn't someone caught in the middle. She chose a side, and it wasn't mine. Then my phone rang. Mom. I almost let it go to voicemail. Some old reflex made me answer. Bryn just called me, she said, worried, not angry. She told me everything. She's begging me to help you two work this out. My blood went cold. Bryn called my mother. She dragged my family into the middle of her mess because she knew I'd have a harder time shutting the door if my mom was on the other side. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She says she made a terrible mistake. Sweetheart, I know you're hurt, but maybe you should hear her out. Bryn wasn't sorry. She was scared. Those are two very different things. I took a breath and told my mom everything. The real version. Not the one Bryn fed her. The 3-month affair. Not a kiss, an affair. The hallway footage of Bryn and Soren coming out of a hotel room together at 7:30 in the morning and kissing in the corridor while the videographer's camera was running. Maya knowing for 2 months and saying nothing while she fixed Bryn's veil at the altar. The whispers caught on the recessional audio. The text Soren sent me asking to meet like 15 years of friendship was a coupon he could cash in. I told her the only honest person at my entire wedding was Will, the videographer. A guy I hired for 8 hours. A guy who barely knew me. He was the only one who thought I deserved the truth. My mom went silent. The real kind. The kind where she's putting things together and the picture looks nothing like the one she was sold. Then she said, she didn't tell me any of that. She said it was one kiss and you wouldn't let her explain. Her voice was harder now. That's because she's still lying. She's been lying this whole time. And now she's calling my mother to manipulate me into coming back. My mom was quiet another second. Then her tone changed completely. Don't you go back to that girl. You hear me? I heard her. For the first time in days, someone in my life was standing on my side of the line without needing to be convinced. The next morning, I was making coffee at Diego's counter when someone knocked. 3 quick, careful knocks. The kind of knock that doesn't want to be heard by the neighbors. I looked through the peephole. Bryn. She was holding a stack of folded papers pressed to her chest. Her eyes were swollen. She hadn't slept either. I opened the door but didn't let her in. She held out the papers. A handwritten letter. 6 pages. Front and back. Just read it. If you still want the annulment after you read it, I won't fight it. You called my mother. You told her a version that left out the 3-month affair. Her face changed. Fast. The flash behind the eyes when someone gets caught off guard. She thought Soren had stuck with the one-kiss story. The version they'd agreed on. Who told you that? Soren. The truth came from him before it came from you. Think about what that means. She opened her mouth. Closed it. There was no angle left. She said the letter explained everything. Feelings and reasons I didn't understand. You had months to say things out loud. You chose not to. You chose Soren. Every single day for 3 months. And on our wedding day, you kissed him 4 hours before you kissed me at the altar. She was crying messily now. I chose you. The wedding was me choosing you. you. I ended it with Soren. That has to count for something. No, the wedding was you keeping both of us. She had no answer for that. She just stood there in the hallway with her face wet and her hands shaking and the letter she'd written hanging at her side like she'd forgotten it was there. I waited a second to make sure she wasn't going to say anything else. She didn't. I stepped back inside and closed the door, set the letter on the counter, and went back to my coffee. It was cold by then. I poured it out and made a new pot. That evening, Diego called. He skipped the small talk. I ran into Soren at the gym. He asked me if I could convince you to slow down on the annulment, but that's not why I'm calling. Soren told me Bryn called him this afternoon. Today, she asked if they could get their stories straight before you talk to more people. This afternoon, Bryn showed up at my door this morning with a 6-page handwritten letter. The same afternoon, she called Soren to coordinate. She wasn't trying to save the marriage. She was trying to control the narrative. I thanked Diego and hung up. I picked up the letter and sat down at Diego's table and unfolded it. 6 pages. Her handwriting neat at the start, messier as it went. She talked about her childhood, about growing up in a house where love came with conditions, about learning early that if you weren't the most wanted person in the room, you were invisible. She talked about the wedding stress, how she felt like she was disappearing into the planning and the guest lists and the seating charts, how Soren made her feel seen during a time when everything felt like it was about the event and not about her, her fear of being left, her need to feel chosen, her pattern of keeping people close even when it was wrong because being alone was the thing that scared her the most. The last line said, "I know I don't deserve you, but I'm asking you to let me try to become someone who does." I read it twice, then I folded it and put it in a drawer. I was done. Not because of the affair, not because of the video. I was done because I just read 6 pages from my wife and not once, not one single time did she ask me how I was doing. 6 pages about her childhood, her fears, her needs, her pain, her reasons. Not one line that wondered what this had done to me. Even in her apology, she was the main character. The next morning, I called Bryn. I told her to meet me at the apartment to go over the paperwork. She agreed too fast. When I pulled up, I saw Soren's car parked on the street. I sat there a minute staring at it. Then I went upstairs and opened the door. They were both there, side by side at the counter, like they'd been waiting for me together. I asked him to come, Bryn said. I thought if we all talked together, we could figure this out. I looked at Soren. Figure what out? How to move forward. All of us. I almost laughed. They thought this was a mediation, like the problem was communication. I sat down across from them and set the folder with the annulment papers on the table. When did it end? The real answer. Bryn looked at Soren. Soren looked at the floor. Right there, in that tiny moment, I saw it. That silent language between them. The kind of look two people share when they've been close enough to read each other without word. Bryn turned back to me. The morning of the wedding. I told you that. I turned to Soren. Is that true? He hesitated. 1 second, maybe 2. Just long enough for the answer to mean nothing. Yes. I pulled out my phone. Diego had taken a screenshot of a post Soren made on social media 4 days after the wedding. A photo of Soren and Bryn at a coffee shop. Bryn had left a heart emoji in the comments and deleted it within an hour. Diego caught it first. I turned the phone around. 4 days after our wedding, you two were at a coffee shop. And Bryn, you left a heart on his post before deleting it. The room went still. That was just coffee, she said. We were talking about how to handle things, how to tell you. You were never going to tell me. Will told me. The only honest person at my own wedding was a man I hired for 8 hours. Soren put his head in his hands. Bryn broke open. You're right. I wasn't going to tell you. I thought if I just stopped seeing Soren, you'd never have to know, and we could be happy. You don't get to decide what I know about my own life. That's not love. That's control. The fridge hummed. Then Bryn said something that stopped everything. Her voice almost a whisper. It wasn't just 3 months. Soren's head snapped up. Bryn, don't. She kept going. It was on and off for a year. Since your birthday party last year. Since Soren and I got drunk on the back porch and everyone else was inside. 1 year, my birthday party. Soren stood up that night with a drink in his hand and gave a toast about how he was the luckiest guy in the world to have a friend like me. I stood up slowly. A year. You stood next to me at the altar after a year of sleeping with my wife. Soren wouldn't look at me. I'm sorry, is all he said. I set the annulment papers in front of Bryn. Sign them, now, and don't call my mother again. She picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking. She signed the first page and turned it and signed the next one and the next one. Soren watched her do it. He didn't say anything. When she was done, she pushed the stack back across the counter toward me and put the pen down beside it like it was something fragile. Then she folded her hands in her lap and looked at the wall. Soren stood up. He paused in the doorway like he was going to say one more thing, then he didn't. He just walked out. I never saw or spoke to him again. That evening, I sent Will a message thanking him for having the courage to include that footage. I told him I knew it must have been hard to make that call. He replied within minutes. I almost didn't, but I thought about how I'd feel if it were me, and I knew I'd want to know. I'm sorry it was me who had to show you. 2 weeks later, I moved into a new apartment. Diego helped me carry the last box in. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. He set the box down by the door, looked around the empty living room, and said it had good light. Then he left, and I sat on the floor against the wall for a while. It was quiet. It was small. It was mine.